Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast at the Edinburgh Fringe. And we begin today's episode with a song called Here We Go, from the evocative and bittersweet music hall musical, The Horror, The Final Curtain.
Well, hello, here we go. We're up for some larks this evening, don't you know? Welcome one, welcome all, to a barrel of laughs before the curtain falls.
Now Nancy tickles your fancy, we're sure you're all agreed. And a trip up Sally's alley is just what the fellas need.
How'd you do? We do too. One voyage from the captain and the crew. Come on in, join the fun, and take it from us, the fun has just begun. Gather round, not a sound, for we've magical tricks to thrill you and astound.
Red Brownlow,
sweet Cassandra,
young Archie, you'll meet soon.
And we'd ask Mr. Close to take a bow, but we'd all sing out of tune. Toodle-pip, toodle-loo, strike up the band, bring up the lights, pull up a chair, pull up your tights. We'll all be pals before the night is through.
Hello and welcome to Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits, although I have no way of proving it to you. You've just heard Here We Go, a great opener from a great show, and that show was called The Horror, The Final Curtain, and it was a fantastic show about the final days of music hall in the 1920s, just before it became variety. We'll be talking more about that show with its creators later in this episode of Musical Talk. But first, it's probably appropriate, indeed it is appropriate, so I'm going to do it, to tell you what today's theme is. Because what I like to do once I've come back from the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, the largest arts festival in the world, is to link up as far as I'm able, and sometimes on completely arbitrary bases, the interviews and conversations I've had about the shows that I saw up there. And last week, you may remember, we were talking about Victorian values and Victorian shows, modern musicals based on source material from the Victorian era. This week, we've gone forward one whole century, because we're going to be concentrating on the 20th century. It's one of my favourite centuries, but only because I am one of its flowers. I was born in that century, and so it means a lot to me. But I don't think anyone could say that it's an undramatic century. And indeed, such is the amount of stuff that was stuffed into that 100 years, that in fact today's episode is only really going to be looking at the first 50 or 60 years of that century. In fact, we have nothing from 1960 onwards. But let's begin at the beginning. Or rather, 13 years into the 20th century, because the first show we're going to be talking about today is set in the period between 1913 and 1915, which makes it absolutely 100 years ago, today, as we speak, that some of the events portrayed in this fantastic musical were actually taking place. It was a show, unfortunately, I couldn't see in Edinburgh, but I did catch up with Suzanne Emerson, who was the director, who told me all about it. What's the name of this show? It's Parade, by Jason Robert Brown and Alfred Ury. Musical Talk.
My name's Suzanne Emerson. Our show is Parade, and we're from Cambridge.
Now, Parade is a well-known show.
Yes, well, yes and no.
It's a well-known show to the people who like musical theatre and know it intimately. So
Indeed.
Why did you pick Parade?
So we did Parade for my local society in Cambridge last year, and
What was that called, by the way, that group? Just so
Festival Players.
They might as well have a plug.
Yeah,
Yes, right.
Festival Players in Cambridge, and I directed the show then, and I just love it. I think the music is exquisitely beautiful, and I think the story is so powerful, and when you're directing something like that and have the opportunity to look at all the background information that you've got on the web about exactly what happened, it just makes it so much more exciting to actually try and direct it and try and deliver the story. So
It's interesting, isn't it, now? Because whenever you see or hear something that interests you, you can now research so much more around it than you could do with just Encyclopedia Britannica or something. But
Indeed.
just for the benefit of our listeners, just very briefly, what's the hook for the plot?
Okay, so it's a true story about a guy called Leo Frank who was a Yankee living in southern state of Georgia just 50 years after the Civil War, also Jewish. And in his factory, a young 13-year-old factory worker was murdered, and it became a massive sort of media story, and there was
a celebre.
Absolutely, and you had governors of different states getting involved. You had ex-presidential candidates getting involved in the whole story, and they never. It's not clear yet whether it's not clear still whether he was guilty or innocent, but he was found guilty. But there was a lot of criticism about the case. Subsequently, his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, whereupon a group of very senior people broke him out of prison and lynched him. So he never got the opportunity to prove his innocence or otherwise, which is why ultimately he was given a pardon, but not because he was innocent, but because he never had that opportunity. So
it's a failure of the judicial system in its worst possible way. Yeah,
absolutely. It's that mob rule, take it into your own hands type stuff.
And you say 50 years after the American
Civil War.
Yes. So, we're talking not far off the Dreyfus case in France, which is a similar miscarriage of justice and, of course, celebre in the French circumstance.
Okay.
Where a soldier, in this case called Dreyfus, who was Jewish, was accused of a whole manner of bits and pieces which he clearly wasn't involved. He ultimately was pardoned and lived, but there was some of this kind of going on,
Yes, I mean, I think it's interesting. You look at these days, and you've got religion as such a sort of topical issue.
We just changed the headers at the top of the page.
Exactly. The same things are happening, perhaps not in the States so much anymore, although even there, but somewhere in the world, the same things.
Still resonant, because although it's an American story set in an American context, it's about truths and things which we hold dear in this country, and indeed other people do, both individually, but also we believe in the rule of law and things like that. We'd rather it didn't go wrong.
Yeah, for me, one of the really interesting factors is the division of society, the fact that the different sides of the media got involved, press people, and that it drew an absolute wedge through society. People fell down on either side, and it was all manufactured. It was all built up. It was all hype, and it was all. And we have the same thing here. We have press. We don't know that we can believe what we read in the press.
Excuse me.
You're self-excluded clearly, but
no, but it's true. As a nation, the press whips things up, and the government feels the need to respond instead of the other way round.
Yes, indeed, and that was exactly the case then. And you had very senior politicians getting involved in the Jeffersonian. So you had Tom Watson, who was a key. He'd been a presidential candidate only 7 years before, and he was very much involved in the hype that was sort of built up, certainly after the conviction. So
now, tell us about the score.
Okay, so it's written by Jason Robert Brown, who is just fabulous.
He is possibly the world's brightest writer at the moment. I mean, with no disrespect to the great Sondheim, but he's not churning them out the way he used to. So.
When I try and describe Jason Robert Brown to people, I say he's like, for me anyway, he's like Sondheim in that he has an enormous complexity. His music is, the rhythms are very complicated, the intonations, but he also adds in lyricalness or whatever. He's
not a simple new Sondheim. I don't think that. Yeah.
No. He manages to keep the complexity but add in beautiful, beautiful tunes, and every song for me that he writes perfectly represents the emotions of that character at that point in the plot. And anyway, it's just glorious, and he involves gospel music and blues music and rock, and it's just all there.
It's a rich, just the context of that particular story alone is a rich musical context, isn't it? I mean, you can pull almost anything you like out of there.
Yes.
And he has, of course.
Yes, indeed.
So, who are the group now?
So this group is it's called One-Off Productions because we're doing this as a one-off.
Is the clue in the name?
Well, I was filling in the forms to come here, and they said, "Well, what's your company name?" And we didn't have a company name, so I just thought, well, we're only going to do this one show, so we became One-Off Productions, and I tell you, probably we will only do one show. This has been a lot of work.
But it is worth it, isn't it? I mean, when it's all done, when you're finally sitting down in your own chair again at the end of it, you'll be so pleased that you did.
I think so, absolutely. And it already, having got this far, this is where it now starts to be fun. And I mean, Edinburgh, it's such a buzzy place to be.
Yeah. Anyone listening to the background of this conversation will tell something's happening. Yes. We are not in a soundproof booth. Yes. So, what are the what are the selling points of this show? Why should people come and see Parade, apart from the fact it's a great show by a top-notch American writer at the top of his form? That's not enough.
No, I know. Okay, you want more. I mean, Parade, particularly in Edinburgh, isn't often done because it's a big show. It's got a lot of parts, and that makes it quite a complicated show to bring to Edinburgh. But we have, I think, managed to bring it together with a small cast, obviously doubling up, and we have a really tight group of performers who most of them performed it last year, and we've had previews in Cambridge and got 5-star reviews, and I don't know. So for me, come because of the material.
Yep.
Come because I think we do an excellent job, and come because it's not a usual musical. It's unusual. It's thought-provoking. It's
food for thought. It's not lie back in your chair and let it wash over you, is it?
Definitely
it's
not.
Engage. But with it, that investment will pay back many-fold, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we really try to bring home at the end that this is a real story. This was real people 100 years ago. 100 years ago today, Leo Frank was sitting in prison halfway between having been convicted and being lynched.
Yeah.
So,
And those are resonances, aren't they? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's...
I must say that you were saying that you do it well. I walked past you're doing a little bit of sort of pre-singing here on one of the mini stages in the Royal Mile.
Yes.
And I was immediately transfixed because the purity of sound that you were bringing across was excellent. So yes,
good.
I must say. But actually, it sounded to me very, very clear, very sound, and you were getting the complexities across in what is actually a very difficult environment for that kind of performance. Because there's a lot of other noise. There's other people only half listening.
Yes.
People walking past.
There's also we have no accompanying music except for drums because we've got no power out here. So, I'm delighted you say that. Then
you're wise to use the wider the songs which are for the full cast. And things like that. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, a soloist probably would be drowned out, I think.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, that was in itself was quite difficult because although there are some great ensemble numbers, a lot of the ensemble numbers carry bits of the story which are a bit dark, and so they. On an event here, they don't come across quite as well as they do in the theatre.
Because when you're taking something, when something's a proper integrated score, if you take something out, lovely though that is,
it doesn't stand so well.
It's one piece of a jigsaw, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, do you have a website?
We don't. Oh. No, I'm afraid we
go
have
to the Ed Fringe for details.
Go to the Ed Fringe for details, absolutely. Or the C venues. We're on at C venues. So.
The one in Chamber Street.
Yes,
yeah, main one.
Yes. I mean, you can go to any of the C venues, and you'll be able to sort of find out about us. But probably the Fringe website is the main place. Parade on at usually it's at 8:10 in the evenings, but for the first 3 performances, i.e. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's at 9:20 in the evening.
So check details.
Check details.
That's a good time in the evening, isn't it? You can have dinner before or dinner after, and it's a perfect evening out.
Absolutely, and then you'll have so much to talk out over dinner if you go for a dinner afterwards.
Now that's a very good point because it's exactly that kind of show.
Yes.
It's not just I like the tunes, or should we have more chips? It really is.
Yes.
Let's open a bottle of wine and talk about this properly.
And it's not even did he do it, didn't he do it? Because although it's written actually, and I think there's a lot of feeling that he didn't do it. It's also about all the other issues that we've been talking about, the media stuff, the racism, all those other things as well. So,
not wishing to suggest any weakness in any diminution of his story, but he is a catalyst for a wider story of how society responds to these difficult circumstances or doesn't.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, it was at a much more brutal time, and so what happened was fine. There's no going back from that. But the sort of the effect on the populace and the fact that it became such a national story is very much now.
Yeah.
So.
And here we are, as you say, a century on, still talking about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I wish you great success.
Thank you very much.
And good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Musical talk. There we are. That was Suzanne Emerson telling us about Parade. And as you can tell, it's a harrowing show, but an excellent piece of work by Jason Robert Brown and Alfred Uhry, who were the creators. Well, that starts this episode off in a fairly downbeat way. One couldn't really say that was a very cheerful story, and it certainly is based on a set of horrible, tragic and appalling circumstances. Nobody comes out of that well. And if you get the chance, do look it up online. I think you'll be surprised at the number of people of prominence who were involved in the actual lynching, because somebody was taking photographs at the event, And it shows, amongst others, politicians, High Court judges, you name it, they were there. It's a truly depressing story at every level. Which is at least in partial contrast to the next thing we're going to be talking about today. And it takes us back to the song you heard at the beginning, which was called Here We Go, and it comes from the musical The Horror, The Final Curtain, which was a fantastic show set in the 1920s in a rickety, run-down old music hall at the end of the great days of the music hall, when it was losing the competition with films and the radio in terms of popular communication and appreciation. And the show itself turned out to be a fantastic piece, a funny and bittersweet delight, and I gave it 4 stars. I also had the great pleasure of talking to 2 of the people behind it, Tom Richards and Geoffrey Mayhew, for a fantastic conversation about the piece itself and about the history of the music hall. And also to talk about its wonderful score, which was, well, as you'll hear in this conversation, brand new and yet very old at the same time. Let's whet our whistles, as they say, by hearing another song from the score. This one's a much more bittersweet, almost a Victorian parlour ballad. It's one of the essential plot songs of the piece, so let's hear The Old Song, which is the name of this song, before we hear the interview with Tom Richards and Geoffrey Mayhew, talking about the horror, the final curtain.
Once by the stage door an old man stood waiting. Clothes were all worn and his hair it was grey. The wind it was chill, it was dark, it was raining. But inside the theatre 'twas warm, bright and gay. A bouquet of roses gleamed red in the lamplight. But deep in his pockets, more precious by far, was a worn manuscript of a song he had written, hoping to hear someone sing it once more. Sweet Sally, the pride of the halls, he'd heard singing, and begged her to come to his humble abode. Night after night he stood patiently waiting, but she passed him by where he stood in the road. One night when she left, there was no one awaiting. The porter was sure the old man must be ill, or too frail to be out in the wind and the weather, hoping against hope his desire to fulfill. Full of contrition, young Sally went running off to that garret where fevered he lay. Faintly he begged her to use her sweet cunning, bring life to his song, for which dearly he'd pay. To sit at the piano he scarcely was able, but strength seemed to flow through his tired aging hands, and a glorious melody soared through the garret, leaving sweet Sally in tears by the end. If you will sing for me richly, I'll pay you. Gold in that coffer I have in full store. Gladly I'll sing, but I will not need paying. For one who is sick, who is old, who is poor. Then up gets the old man and shows her the coffer. She scarcely believes what her eyes say is true, for the coffer is filled to the brim with gold sovereigns, more than King Graces could ever accrue. Later that evening, no sudden discretion, to Nancy poor Sally tells all the strange tale. Wide-eyed our Nancy hears Sally's confession, and answers with words that make Sally turn pale. It's back to that garret and steal all his money. What he used to a miser is silver and gold. While we're young, let us frolic and play while we may do. A long time you're dead, and before that you're old. poor Sally by Nancy is hurried back to that garret she'd recently left. In tears by the bedside sees sweet Sally tarry, while Nancy is boldly committing the theft. But the old man awakes, sees the girl at the copper, a pistol produces and takes careful aim. Loyal Sally the lamp takes and hurls it right at him. Behold the poor victim consumed by the flames.
I'm Tom Richards. I am the co-book writer, director and performer in The Horror, The Final Curtain.
And I'm Geoffrey Mayhew. I wrote the score and the lyrics, and I'm the musical director for The Horror, The Final Curtain, and I do appear briefly on stage as well.
You have a significant role midway.
Thank you.
Now, let's just set the scene ever so slightly. We're in a rickety 1920s music hall, and the peak of the musical was really the First World War, and by the 20s, other forms of entertainment such as films and the early days of wireless are sort of starting to kick in. So it's a little bit down on its luck, and so
Very
are its
much.
performers.
Yeah.
Can I say, first of all, that's a very interesting approach to take, because when people do things about the music hall, which is what this essentially is, it's a drama set in a music hall and about the music hall.
Absolutely.
And is wonderful for that. I love the musical, I must say. I missed it, but I love I love the echoes. But going for that era, because when people do recreations, either the good old days style, let's have a night in the music hall, or drama set in musicals themselves, it's very rarely this end of the musical. It's either the heyday, if you like, which is anything from 1850 to about 1920, I suppose, or it's the absolute tail end of variety when Max Miller's about to see it off, shall we say, in the 50s and 60s. The 1920s is lovely, evocative period, but it's an interesting time for the music hall. So tell me a little bit about how this came to be and why that era.
Well, The Final Curtain is actually a follow-up to a show called The Horror, which we did at Wilton's 2 years ago.
The fantastic Wilton's in London, yes.
Exactly. And that show was set in 1904, so it was very much the kind of
glory days,
glory days of music hall. But in coming back to the concept, and we did reuse some of the songs from that, as well as a considerable number of new ones for this show. We felt that one of the things we most wanted to do differently was to have a more coherent framing narrative that was more about the music hall itself, and we thought that there was a really nice kind of shabby tragedy in
that's a beautiful description as well,
because in the original, if you like, the threat from outside was actually supernatural, whereas here the unease that's generated by the fact that the company is on the verge of collapse is what drives it. So this is why this period is much more appropriate. You've got a built-in unease before you start. Everybody's worried, everybody's concerned, nobody's been paid.
yes, and that always cheers people up.
Absolutely.
and life mirrors art, mirrors life.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Well, this is Edinburgh.
Yes.
So I hadn't realised it was a sequel. That's very interesting, because forgive me, the original one passed me by, and I'm very sorry.
No,
for that.
no,
I am actually
not at all.
London-based, but what's lovely about this is you don't need to have seen that then, because
No,
it here's
not
its
at
own
all.
right.
It's and a sequel is not really how I'd put
Yeah,
it. It's perhaps a
furtherance.
remake or a reboot or
The first was, if you like, a jumping-off point almost.
Yes, yeah, there were elements of it we liked and thought could go somewhere. So some of the characters have the same names, and even in some cases similar traits.
Yeah.
But there is not a
Not a word of dialogue, I don't know.
no. In fact, there are 5 lines.
Five lines.
The introduction to the girls' second song with the puppets, that is
That's
lifted
it.
pretty much clean from the original. Other than that,
And I
all
don't know,
new.
I can't remember how many new songs, 6, something like that.
I think it's four old and 6 new songs. I think that's right. And some new lyrics on the old ones.
Well, let's leap into the score, because people have a view of what musical music was, and then there is what musical music actually was.
Yeah.
And it's a much wider range of options, and it is the full range of songs, from the poor to the good, from the comic to the
Absolutely.
serious, from the bittersweet. I think we would say that's a tonal point that one gets in this, and also one might have got on the stage a lot, because one thinks of that as being a colour of the Victorian era, should we say, and even in the 20s that would have lasted. can I congratulate you, and I hope you won't mind my saying this, tonally, I thought the songs felt original, by which I mean not just you had written them, but they actually felt that they may have come from the period. There was enough resonance, I thought, with my understanding of the music hall, for these to feel like proper musical songs. Both the comic, there's the slightly rude one about pulling buttons through a buttonhole with a hook, which I believe may have had a second meaning.
Heaven forfend.
Absolutely. And particularly as the verses move on as well,
yes.
if I may say. Really ran that home, if I may say.
Yes.
So
to speak.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honour. But also the one with the puppets, as you say, which of course is a plot significant piece, but has sadness infused in it, and has the right. I think it helps the fact that you play your own songs as well,
yes,
rather splendidly on that piano, which
yes.
has the feel of a 1920s end of the piano.
It does. It's a daily challenge. Yes.
It's a piano that fights back.
Yes.
I must ask, you are undoubtedly a fan of the music hall.
Yes, clearly.
And yes, clearly.
Yes.
So,
or popular music generally. I mean, from the street ballad through. Yes.
So, when someone said, "Could you then write some?" I mean, I take it you've written before as well.
Yes.
You're an accomplished composer. Is that something that fills you with delight, or do you feel that because it's not, they aren't. Are they pastiches? That's the question I'm lurching towards. Or
right.
Are they real? Are they just have to be 21st century musical songs?
Yes. If I was going to use shorthand in an interview, I would use the word pastiche, but they're not, because actually there's another aspect to them in that I have tried to make them sound as much as possible as if they could have been written then, but they couldn't have been. They're actually written for the audience now, and I hope that doesn't notice.
Well, I didn't.
But they are. They're filtered through a bright filter. Because if you look back, I mean, the best quick reference anyone can use is Charles Keeping's A Cockney Ding Dong, that volume that he illustrated, which is definitive on the music hall. And if you look at them, there is a slightly rawer edge. It's slightly less accessible now, and I've accessibilized them.
So you are still speaking to the current audience, as you must. But
exactly.
But it's certainly resonant.
Oh yes, I'm hoping that's hidden, a hidden asset, if you like.
And forgive me, this is probably a cheeky question, and it's probably also a stupid question, but there's never stopped me asking those before. Are there any particular aspects of the genre, and I use the genre wrongly, but I'm using genre for an era rather than, because there is no such thing as a genre, I don't think, in this form. But are there tricks? That's also not the right word. What are the motifs and the obvious motifs that would make a song sound like a musical song, and that you've adopted? I mean, forgive me, you have a level of understanding and sophistication here which I think is very deep, and I'm therefore not expecting you to be able to draw that out immediately, but I'm interested at a thumbnail sketch level, perhaps.
Yes, I would say that if there is a key to it, then I haven't consciously used it. I can go in reverse and say, in retrospect, what the keys were, and I can see them clearly.
Well, let's
but
do
when
that
I
with the
write,
vehicle
it doesn't happen
going.
that way. Yeah.
So what are those things?
Well, obviously, there's a specific harmonic progression which does crop up time and time again in terms of both the sentimental and the joyful and the robust. There is also an approach to when there is a piano reduction, and those piano reductions I have studied, and I also spent some time writing my own piano reductions of existing music hall songs.
So you have it at your fingertips?
So I've got the format fairly clean as far as the actual piano parts are concerned. As far as the texts are concerned, then really it's a question not so much of the music but of the period. You're actually dealing there with the sociology of music, and the way that will work is to simply say, right, okay, well, what could be written at this period, and then enhance it for now.
And can I ask you a question in terms of the narrative? The songs that you've written, is your view that the songs that the characters in the piece sing are singing newly minted at the time musical numbers? Are these 20s and teens of the 20th century songs, or are they, do you think, singing songs that for them already have a certain vintage and have the pattern of age, if you like, from the late Victorian era?
They will have a certain pattern of age in that one of the conceits is that the company is on its uppers and has been doing, and hasn't moved with the times, except for the love duet, which is straight 1920s. Carol Gibbons, Billy Mayle, so on and so forth, I say with respect. But the others are probably stuff that they've been playing for 15, 20 years, or maybe took from another show on the end of the pier and pirated.
It's a series of hand-me-downs.
Yes.
Well, I will come back to the music because I'm absolutely. I think the score is wonderful. I must say, I think it's stunning. I think, and I hadn't spotted the fact that it was, which is a sign of your quality. I hadn't spotted it just felt sufficiently of its era, and I don't think I'd realised how accessible you made it. Even though they were completely accessible, I could, naturally assume that writing in the style of Victorian era, thereabouts,
remained accessible.
Yes, exactly. But I'd like to move that onto the narrative side because there's a certain risk, isn't there, when you're writing a down-at-heel group of characters in a down-at-heel environment. And you are, if you like, it's not the Toastmaster by that period of music hall anyway, because that sort of disappeared, hasn't it? But you are the lead comic who, in a sense, sort of runs the place,
exactly,
and the stage.
Actually, the funny thing in researching this version of the show was that one of the most useful sources out there on the music hall is John Major's book, My Old Man, and
which is
and as it turned out, having already pretty much sketched out the narrative arc, I started reading My Old Man and realised that in an awful lot of ways Tom Major Ball was in a very similar position to Alf Brownlow at about the same time.
Yeah. So we're in a way we're almost talking archetypes, maybe sadder archetypes, but real experiences. But there's a danger, isn't there, when he's a comic.
Absolutely.
And he's a professional comic, so he knows how to do it, but he's lost his edge. He's jaded by the circumstances he finds himself in, particularly in his domestic life as well as his professional life. And let's be honest, his jokes are not the strongest. And you have to be a brave man to go on stage with jokes you know are not the strongest jokes, and then sell them in a positive but not absolutely positive way. You do it marvellously. I mean, you live the part, but it's a brave choice. When you were writing it, were you aware of the tightrope you were setting before yourself?
Absolutely. And fortunately, what I was also aware of was that I was going to be doing these next to James Utekin, who plays Archie, Alf's other half, comically.
He's almost your straight man in a way, isn't he?
Yes, yeah. and James is brilliant, and he has such energy and such charm that I think by having him on the stage at the same time, it's a lot easier for an audience to buy into and enjoy the sadness and that slight awkwardness about it.
He has a kind of I like that role because he has a kind of sort of cheerful, idiotic Gorm. Yeah. Well, I suppose it's Gorm-less, really, actually, isn't it? Rather, but which is it actually feels very appropriate. It's also a sense of the younger holding up the older in an odd way. How have the jokes gone down on? How the audience responded to the piece overall as well? Actually, that's a very good question.
Actually, largely very well indeed.
It's been fine.
Yeah,
it's
been absolutely lovely, and there've been mixed sizes. We've had some very nice big houses, and then on Sunday, I think it was just tipping it down all day, and I don't think anyone wanted to leave the house. I mean, we had about 12 in or something, but they were still laughing, and that's always a great sign when you've got.
They worked hard for this, didn't they?
Yeah, they
clapped louder, laughed louder.
Well, sometimes smaller audiences feel more intimately connected. Actually, there are benefits sometimes,
and it sort of fits the tone of the show. I mean, we are explicitly referencing the empty seats.
It's the method, darling. The method. Yes. Now, I've got a question about musical because, as I said at the beginning, I'm too young for it. We all are really. I
remember it well.
If you did remember it, you wouldn't be in a position to remember it, I think, if that makes any kind of sense at all. But we are just that too far. If you argue that musical died with Max Miller, which is what he argued, there's been I know it's not as simple, but it had morphed into variety by then anyway. Yeah. Television picked up variety, but even that, it went away and came back again, but it seems to be all singing now. Musical is dead, essentially. And we don't even, the players barely operate in London anymore. It's not what it was. We've lost quite a lot of the connection with it. So it exists not as a memory, but as a concept, if that makes sense. Are you noticing that? Because I came in on the Saturday, and I hope you don't mind, I immediately felt able to go, ooh, and join in, because I assume that was required and expected.
It's interesting.
But you encourage us as well.
We very much want the audience to get in and do that, and about half of them do. And actually, maybe you'd split it into thirds. There are a third who do it right from the get-go, as you lot did on Saturday, which is great. And then there are some who don't get it at all, and some who cotton onto the idea on the last of the introductory spiel bits, the one about a scintillating psychic seance of whatever it is.
You go
probably remember my lines before tonight, but but no, that one usually picks them up if they haven't got it before. I think perhaps just because it's a bit longer.
Yeah, it's clearly meant as a show-offy line, isn't it?
Oh,
I mean, as it is. How do you encourage an audience to do that? Because, you know, we live in the fourth wall breaking is still very much a part of British theatre, but mostly now through pantomime. You know, and those tropes are still well known, and obviously they have they grew up in parallel with musical in the 19th century as we understand them.
Well, I think we've already given a slight pantomimic license with Tom standing there in a spotlight in front of a dingy red curtain with a strange moustache. I mean, you know,
it's an excellent moustache.
Yes, and we've had tinkly piano, and you know.
I mean, funnily enough, I think
it's picking up its feeling, isn't it?
Yes, and then you know, Tom's eyeballing the audience and daring them to a certain extent.
Well, and equally, it is still something that audiences expect to do at a stand-up gig.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, just last night I was at Daniel Kitson, and he would, more or less on the spot, make up some funny little chant and egg the audience into joining into it with him. And that's, I think because they get the idea that it is that kind of performance rather than necessarily strictly a play.
And you speak directly to the audience, of course, because the character has to. I mean, that's...
They are there. They exist in the world. So
it just strikes me that I may be talking balderdash here. It has been known, but you know, a British audience will respond, but they always need to feel they have license to do so.
Yeah, that is precisely correct.
So how do you give them that license? Is it exactly the way you've been saying, through eyeballing them and direct address? You, madam.
Yes, yes. And then you're there.
And they've already at that point been directly, in so many words, invited to participate in the chorus of the opening, the final chorus of the opening number.
Which are included on the song sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think, you know, just a few gestures, looks, it usually gets
although
there.
You're absolutely right about where we stand in relation to music hall now, it's not even a memory. You know, that generation has gone. There's still the trappings are left, you know, in the folk memory.
Well,
yes, that's true. That is true.
And funnily enough, actually, it's probably more, or things close to it at any rate, are probably more accessible to more people now than they were 15 years ago, because of YouTube.
Oh, you can still catch Ginger Brackets singing on the good old days.
Exactly.
Well, there's a vast swathe of originals, huge swathe of originals.
Gus Elan and
yes, during the late 1930s, from Pathé News and things, there must be at least 30 or 40 clips.
There's bits of Max Miller.
Old Charles Coburn. He was in his 80s, I think. Mm-hmm. There's a very famous. He actually sings it in French as well, isn't it? The man who broke the bank at Monte Carlo. Yeah. So you're right, actually. You're right. I think you're very correct about the folk memory of it as well. You know, what has lingered beyond its death.
Yes, that is how it was done.
Yes. Do you consider that to be authentic, by the way? You know, you've tried to make the show authentic. How authentic are you feeling that you're being? As authentic as one can be in an accessible way?
That's the general idea. Yes. Yeah, I mean, as far as the book is concerned, I think it's probably fair to say that I've taken some liberties. I mean, we have... we want it to feel like music hall, but equally I am very aware that comedy has evolved quite a lot in the last century.
It's certainly true that when I turn on the television, no one says I say anymore.
And there are, and we need a modern audience to laugh at the jokes.
Yeah,
so we've certainly kept some that not only are in the tradition, but are in fact just actually that old. But equally there are gags that work in a way that would not have been written at the time.
But a lot of it is inviting the audience to, if you like, display their taste, perception and intelligence in not liking but liking the jokes.
Well, it is layered, isn't it? This is a show, when I say face, that's not the right word, because I don't want to say it's two-faced, but it's a show with many levels.
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
take it broadly as it is and have it present to you as it pretends to. Although it does unfurl and unwrap and reveal itself rather beautifully, like a Fabergé egg. You know, it's got a genuine heart. It's a sad heart, but you know, but it doesn't reveal itself all. It's a tease because without actually advertising, it's a tease as well. I think that's lovely. You know, you get a little bit of plot here and a little bit of plot here, and here's some sadness and here's a bit of a problem, and then it also connects at the end in this. I must say, a very sad ending, I think. I mean, it's a tragic ending, really, to be honest, for everyone involved, some more than others. But I love the way that actually, almost by sleight of hand, you get to an emotional oomph at the end, when in fact it isn't obviously genuinely emotional all the way through. I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. There is the emotion in it, but there's the facade that people put up because everyone does, and we get the facade. But as you say, people understand that there's more than the facade going on,
yes.
And I love that at every level.
And if you took that troupe at that particular period, they would be fairly hard bitten, and so they would have to be covering their tracks, their emotional tracks, to actually get out the end of the pier on a daily basis anyway.
Yeah.
All sorts could have gone on behind that curtain, but then you get out. It is Vesti la Juba, writ large, isn't it?
It was very much something I was keen to do with the show, was to make it, on the one hand, something which was entirely capable of being enjoyed at a very straightforward, here is a fun, silly performance with insanely catchy songs and dreadful jokes, and something that people
it's a combination which goes down very well, by the way.
We like it. We still snicker.
But at the same time, to have some emotional weight to it, and also enough depth to repay close attention. And I think if someone watched it again, they would probably pick up on a lot of little clues and cues and things which might have passed them by the first time.
Which is risky. I mean, not everybody has bought into that. But then, the alternative would be a player's style recreation, which is fine in itself, but not what we're here to do.
Or overplaying the emotional subplot,
yes,
which would have Disneyfied.
Exactly.
What I love about it is its lack of sentiment, actually. Yeah. It has emotional meaning and an emotional heart, but it doesn't have emotional heart in that kind of big red heart you see on the front of the card.
It's the emotions from people like us.
It is real, yes. Actually, we're back to bittersweet there, because, I think that's a tinge of an emotion you never see in a Disney number, and yet it runs through nearly all of us in some way. We all have memories and sadnesses and losses and regrets, which we don't let get us down, but never quite let us forget, if that makes sense.
I mean, I always like to think of the outcome of that show. That after that show, I probably ended up in a very small bungalow in Peacehaven. Tommy's begging on the streets. The girls are now working in a shop. And James has gone on to West End stardom.
Yes. But funny enough, you've just immediately listed that, but that feels absolutely right. That is how they went. Now you said it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm probably not even West End, actually. He's off to the Cine.
Yeah, he's off. Of course.
Yes.
Got the looks, isn't he?
Yes, he's been taken up by Fred Carno, and
hat on heart rather than anything else. Let us talk about. We've had audience reaction in the show. How has audience reaction after the show been? You were saying that some people sort of get it, some people don't. I think that's actually a compliment to the show. But,
they still
feedback
enjoy it. I mean, we do get people coming up to us in reasonable quantities after the show and being very, very nice, which is, that's the best possible thing that can ever happen, isn't it?
It has by and large been absolutely lovely. We've had people come up and say things like, that's the best thing we've seen on the Fringe, and which is always...
Which never bad thing
to
hear.
No, doesn't hurt the ego.
And you've got stars. I've seen your stars.
And we just got 4 from the stage yesterday. Yep. So that was very nice, and 4.5 from the public reviews, and an absolutely lovely write-up with only 3 stars from Younger Theatre, but still
3 stars not to be sniffed at.
No.
And probably the best write-up, which is curious, but there we go. But still grateful, not complaining.
Now let's talk about your actual performances. I'm going to start with you, if I may, because you have a dual role, because you have actually a triple role in some senses, because you're the man behind the pack. You're the musical director. Yeah. Both of the show in its as a production, but also in the show that we're seeing.
Exactly.
You stand behind the piano. You also do get up and join in some of the chorus numbers.
Yes.
And then, of course, you have the scene with the device.
Yes, with the device,
which is a proper, showman scene, isn't it? Yes. You come up and it's a conjuring trick of sorts.
Yes.
That makes you very versatile. How do you find
well, it's
the range,
nice.
Darling, the range?
The range, well, I'd be modest on that one. The range is not that enormous because the role is straightforward, get up and do it. I mean, subtle probably it isn't, but it's immensely enjoyable. It's a lovely part, and
And you get a member of the public up as well, don't you?
Oh, yes.
So you have proper, not just talking to them, but they come up.
The whole public relationship bit, yes, it's immensely fulfilling. I won't go into it in any detail in case anybody hears this and then comes, because
we don't ruin
it should be sprung on them, yes.
But I think we can safely say the words canopic jar.
Canopic jar,
which I so rarely get to use in reviews.
Yes, yes, use it again. Yes, canopic jar.
Yes, it's a lovely scene, that as well, and it feels exactly right once again, and it comes in the right point of the show because it has this, it has the entertainment value of seeing a country trick happen to someone else in the audience, which is always pleasant.
Yes.
And then, of course, the meaning that is imbued from that.
Yes. Things are going quietly wrong.
In a way, that's actually the point on which I think the show turns. We have had hints before that, but really, that is the moment from when we have to know that something is really not quite right in this world.
Yes. But there are some other... the score is fantastic and the performances support the score and the show altogether are lovely. There's not a duff performance at all, I think.
They're a good bunch.
And really I really like the puppet song, which, as I say, is plot significant, but works perfectly in its own right and is sad and has all the hallmarks. It feels like a parlour ballad.
Yeah.
I can imagine. One can imagine a nice end of the 19th century Victorian family standing around their piano
with Auntie
and singing it.
Yep,
yes,
that's her song. Yes.
Yes, and it has its moral meaning as well. So
absolutely.
No one goes home empty-moraled.
Yeah.
And then there's the saucier songs, because it is, there is that dichotomy, isn't there? There's the improving and the naughty. I do like, by the way, some of the double entendres are played up, but some of the double entendres are left entirely for the audience. I don't think it's a great credit to me that I very quickly got "Do you know my mother, Mrs. Cox?" which you repeat until penny drops, isn't it? Really?
Yes.
And how long has that taken on different nights?
It varies wildly, actually. Depending on the smuttiness.
The audience have been so nice and refined that they haven't got that at all. But what's really funny is if you get virtually nothing except a really big burst of laughter, usually from some lady.
Oh, really?
And then, which is quietly smothered then.
You were lucky to have Camilla Parker Bowles in.
Yes.
Oh God, I'm just imagining what happens when my old course director from my gap year, Debs, comes in, because she is definitely going to get that, and she has a laugh that can be heard several counties away.
So, can I ask you a little bit about your backgrounds as the creators of this? What you've worked together before on Horror of the Horror.
Yes.
But what are your roots historically? By which I mean professionally. You have to come from a small Kentish town. Yes.
I did a full-time drama course in Stratford in my gap year, and then a lot of theatre in a huge variety of capacities while I was at university, acting, directing, producing,
and what did
production
you read?
management, French and philosophy.
Oh, so it wasn't directly...
No. Although I did a lot of drama, quite a lot of drinking, and not very much French or philosophy.
I believe football. That is traditional. It's actually written on the syllabus, isn't it?
And after that, I moved up to London and sort of started to make a go of acting, and a little while after that, Stuart and I set up Theatre of the Damned together and staged a small Grand Guignol show at the Etc. Theatre as part of the Camden Fringe, which went very well and sold out completely, and so we went back for a longer run. Actually, the very first person our company ever auditioned was Kate, who is still with us playing Nancy in this show, and James was also in it. He was a childhood friend of my younger brother. I think I first cast him when he was 13, when I was a student.
How they grow.
Yeah. Theatre of the Damned has just kind of fortunately been able to succeed more or less each time we've done a show and progress to larger and more exciting venues. We were incredibly lucky to be picked up by Wilton's off the back of our 2011 show and asked to do something there. And at the same time, I'm carrying on with the acting. Last year, our Edinburgh show was a one-man play written by Stuart called The Ghost Hunter, which Geoffrey directed me in, and that's been just finished touring. Start of July, so that has eaten it.
Straight from one into the other.
Yeah, very much so. In fact, we were rehearsing horror for some months while I was still touring Ghost Hunters.
And you, Jeff?
Well, I'll try and cut it very short because obviously I'm a much older person, and so
You have a much better head of hair than I, though. So.
easy done. And yes, I suppose because I was reasonably good academically at school, I was rather dragooned into going to university to be an academic. But I'd started piano very young, and that ran parallel. I never really dropped it, and so therefore through school and college I was doing performances, musicals, and when I left college I was still doing music, and indeed did 2 or 3 years in London as a cabaret performer in my 20s. So that was never left behind. And then to go through an awful lot of vagaries, I suppose the seminal bit for me is that I spent 15 years running a youth school and community theatre, which was understaffed, and I had to do everything. So, I was writing material for that, I was playing the piano for that, I was putting up the lights, I was making the costumes, painting the sets, with a lot of help, but fundamentally I did that for 15 years full time.
So the education came to you as well as for the pupils?
The education massively came to me. The learning curve was upright because it had to be. And I think
just like your piano.
Exactly. And therefore I think that's what's given me the drive to simply get things done in a quick, efficient way.
And that's a real skill. I mean, you sound like a handy man to have on board.
Yeah, I had no choice, basically. The show went up and you had to do it.
But when did you fall for music hall as an idea and a concept?
I did my first pub gig when I was 14.
Gosh.
And at that point, which is a long time ago, then doing music hall songs in pubs was, we still had the living generation. And I come from the kind of East End background whereby, yes, we did gather around the piano. It was a child's keeping, and there were Saturday night ding-dongs. And I was more or less sung to sleep by grandmothers with music hall songs.
Really? So it's also part of your... Yeah,
totally,
yeah.
Yes. I'm
Absolutely
just about that bridging generation. My grandparents were born in the 1880s.
You could still, as late as the 70s and 80s, go to pubs in certain parts of the West End and they would be having sing-alongs from which a number of musical
Absolutely.
numbers would, the traditional stuff, which you just wouldn't get now.
No. And I was playing some of them.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite, by the way? I've got to ask.
Of music hall songs?
Yes.
Real ones?
Yes.
Possibly, if it wasn't for the houses in between.
Oh, right, which takes us back to Gussie Lamb, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was perhaps a favourite.
I should say that mine's a little bit later. My favourite musical number from the original run is, but it's a 20s number. It's a post-war number. Is A Night I Appeared as Macbeth.
Oh yes.
So I've always been a great fan of that.
Yes.
And I've sung it very badly in public. And have you had a love of the music hall, or is it something that you've grown to?
No, it's really not something that I knew a lot about or had much contact with. There were a few songs I'd heard and what have you, but really it is something that I was sitting down and researching from scratch before doing the original The Horror at Wilton's back in 2012. And since then, it's something I've become extremely fond of, and we've actually done, quite apart from Theatre of the Damned's work, Jeffrey and I and some of the others have done straight up music hall sets at Wilton's for events of various descriptions, a Christmas party, I think was it a wedding reception?
Yes, and we did
and some corporate gigs,
stuff.
So there is still some demand, which is really pleasing.
Oh, they love it to bits.
So, yeah.
They love it to bits.
That's the thing, isn't it? Everyone I know who's ever been sort of dragged along to it, sometimes one has to force them into it, does enjoy what little they get to see.
We tried, when we're doing that as a sort of semi-stand-up, though, we're not particularly being 1900-ish. The feeling that I have then is that we're more like in the 1950s, and that we are round the piano in the parlour, and the older generation are singing their favourite songs, so we can feel more of a grip.
And it is very overtly a nostalgic exercise.
Rather than a recreation, and I think that's what makes it really work, because it does really work.
It's back to the folk link thing, not a folk memory, but a folk sense, which when things become sort of lodged in the folk hand down, that is because they mean something, and they still mean something, even if you can, if the obvious reasons for them has gone, or the obvious trappings. I think so.
And
I wish it was still a bit more lively, I must say, but there we are.
Well, I think also there are still obviously the music hall influenced a lot of other subsequent artistic output, and
yes.
traces of that are still very much with us, and things people are aware of. I'm sure that
even into the mainstream. Lionel Bart.
Well, no, I was going to say
yeah.
Bart and Lerner and Lowe in My Fair Lady as well. Are very much playing at times with.
Well, Jay Lerner was a huge Anglophile, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So, it's funny you should say that, and in a performing sense, we got our dear old Nicholas Parsons, who's 90 years young, and of course was a straight man originally to, I can't even remember his name, but very much a product of the 20s, 30s, 40s music hall, who was still performing on television in the 50s. So, yes, it's still with us in some way. So, we met in the Royal Mile yesterday.
Yeah.
And a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And you were telling me that, in fact, the final curtain may actually be a literal final curtain, because your curtains have caused you a certain amount of trouble, haven't they? Just anecdotally. You've got the proper backdrop, the Morecambe and Wise curtain, if you like.
Yes, we thought it was, on the one hand, structurally essential to the way the show is written, that there can be acts in one while things are changed behind it, as of course there would have been, and it simply feels right. That curtain aesthetically needs to be there. But in the reality of doing a Fringe show where you have, if you are lucky, 10 minutes to put everything up and 10 minutes to take it down at the end of the show, it has been a challenge getting that operation slick and in time, and we can now do it.
I think the real challenge was getting that curtain to malfunction in a period where at exactly those right moments. I think we need a pat on the back for that.
Its timing was perfect.
It gave just that extra bit of atmosphere. I'm sure it was the half-star in the 4.5-star review.
It has to be said, of course, though, that, the Bedlam Theatre where you're based is actually it doesn't have a curtain, does it? But it's a lovely theatre.
We went for that space by the throat.
Doesn't it feel right?
It's pretty much
our choice number one.
The only
totally.
fringe venue that I feel this show would be right in.
Yeah, we're not talking a room in a hotel. Wouldn't work for that.
Or even
it's
a black box studio.
Seats.
A nice, there are some lovely spaces at Pleasance or wherever you want to go where it's a perfectly well equipped modern black box studio, and if you stuck a bunch of curtains in there, it would feel like a modern black box studio with some curtains up in it.
With Ghost Hunter, and we've been at Assembly.
And Pleasance is a lovely place to work, but for this show, it kind of had to be better.
And do you have a website?
We do. It is www.theatreofthedamned.com.
And finally, what future for the final curtain? How final is this curtain?
We would very much like to take it somewhere, and we are still working on exactly where that will be. It's unlikely that it can tour unless someone with a lot more money than we have comes along and says they want to book it, because it has a cast of 6 and needs realistically at least 3 crew on top of that, and that is just too expensive for a company on our scale to take around the country. What it could do is an extended run in London. We've done a couple of nights at Wilton's as previews, but it would be lovely to go back to London. Which sold out, and did terrifically there, and it felt pretty incredible doing it on that stage. But no, we would love to have a longer London run, and it is something we are working on, but do not have one booked in yet.
So, all offers to the website?
Yeah, very much so.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been wonderful to talk about it. It's a lovely, lovely show, and I wish you huge success for the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Musical talk. Well, there we have Geoffrey Mayhew and Tom Richards. What a delight it was to speak to them. I truly enjoyed that conversation. It's so nice to meet people who know what they're talking about and are able to get that enthusiasm and also professional representation of what it is they love on stage. 2 great people with a great show. 4 stars, as I said, for this funny and bittersweet delight. The horror, the final curtain. And don't forget to go along to their website. Well, the 20th century was pretty much one disaster after another, dressed up with some cultural delights. In Britain, the 20s saw the general strike, and of course the first effects of the Wall Street crash. So you couldn't say it was a great time. The 1930s saw an appalling depression, and then the lurch to war across Europe and then ultimately across the world. And yet at the same time, what a flowering of culture it was. You had the great songwriters of the 20s and 30s, Richard Rodgers and Lawrence Hart, Irving Berlin, Cole Porter, George and Ira Gershwin, and Jerome Kern, Ivor Novello and Noel Coward. Just to name a few. I haven't even added Vivian Ellis, one of my own personal favourites. A great period for culture, and that's just in popular song. So let's now hear an interview with somebody about their show, which features that kind of music in a modern show set in 1939 and 1940. And of course, if you know anything of world history at that time, the Second World War was starting. And one of its side effects was that the 1940s Olympics, which were scheduled to take place in Tokyo, were cancelled. It must be said there was something very odd going on in the 20s, 30s and 40s about the Olympics, because all the Axis countries seemed to get a bite of the cherry. As I said, Tokyo in Japan was going to get it in 1940. We know full well that Nazi Germany got it in 1936, and Mussolini's Italy got it before that. It seems pretty obvious to me that the Olympic Committee of the period was swayed by a smart military uniform. But let's talk about the Outback Games, a fantastic new musical by Nicholas Edwards about a response to that cancellation of the 1940 Olympic Games. I spoke to Nick in a slightly windy atrium, it must be said, in the Assembly Hall building at the top of the Mound, one of the great grand buildings of Edinburgh, to talk about his fantastic show, the Outback Games.
My name is Nick Edwards. I'm the writer of the book, the script and the music, and also the producer of the Outback Games, a new musical having its world premiere at the Edinburgh Fringe this year.
Which makes you the quadruple threat in a way.
Yes.
But so, as very much the father of the baby, should we say. Tell me about the Outback Games, just in a nutshell. How would
Sure.
the story?
Well, it's a kind of traditional play with music. The story revolves around a very interesting character, a young woman from the outback of Australia who was determined to win a gold medal in swimming at the 1940 Olympic Games in Tokyo. But of course, because of the war, those games were cancelled. They were moved on to Helsinki. The bombing of Helsinki meant they were cancelled as well. She was so incensed she decided to host her own rebel games in the outback of Australia. And that's where our story lands, about the story of that coming together.
And this is based on a true experience, a true circumstance, to a degree.
Well, it's
it's a degree that counts.
Absolutely. The good thing about degrees is they come in many shapes and sizes. It's true that the war meant that the Tokyo and the Helsinki Games were cancelled. The rest of the details are very sketchy in that a lot of it is made up. But there's a kernel of truth in the story if the actual facts are mostly made up.
So there wasn't actually a Rebel Games in Australia
well,
in 1940,
and very interestingly, the show finishes at the point where we don't know what happened. So it's all about the preparation, the excitement, the build-up, the coming together of the community. So whether they actually happened or not isn't actually important.
And that's not what it's really about. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah.
However, it does leave us all tantalisingly hanging on for perhaps the sequel.
I think there are many spin-offs. So many of the characters have come so richly to life that I think there could be many spin-offs and sequels. It could run and run.
Tell me, how did you come up with the idea?
Well, Well, I've been writing it for about 4 years. The idea is maybe about 5 or 6 years. Originally, I wanted to do something for the 2012 Olympics in London. Obviously, a massive event. And we thought we really need something tied in because the West End is fabulous, best place in the world for musical theatre.
Oh, well, we thank you. Well, we don't necessarily agree.
Okay. I wanted to do something then. But of course, this type of show takes always longer than you expect it to create.
On the other hand, a good gestation period
can
be really healthy in the creation process.
Yes, definitely, yeah. And so it was very good to have the Glasgow Commonwealth Games this year, and of course Rio in a couple of years' time. And of course
there's never a shortage of sporting events in the world.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, it's always something to tie it in. And I was, even though I've lived in Britain for the last 20 years or so, I was brought up in rural Australia. So the characters in the show are actually drawn from people I've known, kind of real characters.
Right.
And so I wanted somehow to bring those characters alive to Britain and hopefully to the rest of the world, maybe even take them back to Australia to see what they think. So it's a combination of those two things, my background, those characters, and the opportunity to match something with a sporting event.
Did you always expect it to be a musical? Was it always envisioned that way?
Yes, and that's a personal thing because I come from a musical background.
What a wise man you are.
Yes, I've only I was brought up having piano lessons and tuba lessons and singing lessons from an early age. Yes, that's my background.
That's quite a range.
It is, yes. Yeah. I'm throwing a bit of didgeridoo and violin as well to that. It's only the kind of the book and the script and the lyric writing I've come to later. It's mainly the music. So it was always going to be a musical. The idea of a straight play, even though I'm working on writing a few of those, it's the music which is the heart of all my work.
Well, let's talk about the music, because I think the score is deceptively splendid, and I don't mean that. I mean that positively.
Okay, good. No, I take that
by
way.
Deceptively, I mean the tone of the piece starts off with an amateur dramatics group in the Outback who are, let's be honest, not tremendously good.
Good. I'm glad you picked that up.
And it's not the actors, obviously, who are really doing it. It is the performances they're giving.
Yes, because it's very difficult to portray being a bad actor unless you're a very good actor.
Yes, or a very bad actor.
Oh, yes.
You can do it that way, but that's the method, that is, but we don't recommend it. Yes, you're quite right. So they're putting on this slightly ropey around the edges sort of tribute to previous Olympics. So it's a very good start. But the score is, all the songs are really, I think, very evocative. I also think that, and you must tell me if I'm talking nonsense, but they seem to be very evocative of the period. Certainly there's at least one number I thought, the Andrews sisters could have sung this in the 40s. There's plenty of sort of talk-songy numbers which I associate with the 30s and the 40s. And of course it is set in, first scene 1939, second scene 1940. How broad is your own range of composers?
Yes, no, very good question. Partly it's because of the setting, and I wanted the music to be of the period, and I'm really glad that you picked up on that.
Well, I think that works absolutely perfectly.
Thank you. Partly it's my own interests as well. I'm a little bit despairing about the modern musical and the state of that, as I'm sure.
I may have found a fellow mind.
Wonderful. That there seems to be a kind of a delay in what's coming on the stage, what's being popular. That we get a lot of what I feel a lot of kind of influence from the 1980s pop music on stage now. Whereas
Would you be mentioning Wicked in this conversation?
I'm not going to mention any names.
Okay, yes, but I do know what you mean. It's the invasion of pop.
Yeah, absolutely.
A particular kind of pop.
Yeah. And there seems, I'm all for having modern music on the stage, but I don't know why we've got a kind of a lag between what's popular now and what's on the stage.
Yes, quite.
But to kind of go against that, I really like the music from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and that's my kind of, my kind of idea. And I'm really loving the idea to get that on stage as well. And I think it works so well with musical theatre. I went to see The Drowsy Chaperone last night, which of course...
Did I.
Oh, right. Oh, that's extraordinary. How did you find it?
I found it excellent.
Me too.
Yes.
I'd never seen the show before, but the idea of celebrating that era, which was, of course, 1920s, yes, which is perfect for the stage. So I've added a couple of decades to that, kind of brought it up to date. But that kind of music works really well. It's a pleasure to sing. It's a pleasure to listen to.
That interwar period and then the first 5 years of the 1940s, I agree with you absolutely. For me, also, I was raised on Fred Astaire films and, Gershwin musicals in Berlin.
And it just works so well. Everyone seems to like it. Interestingly, I was having a chat to our musical director yesterday, and I've only known him for about 2 months. And he's only his early 20s, just graduated, fabulous chap. And I was asking him what he thought about the kind of the style of the music in this show, and he said that he couldn't really place it.
Really?
He said for him it wasn't really musical theatre as we know it now, because
it isn't now.
No, exactly. He's steeped in Sondheim and.
That's an exception in itself.
Absolutely, yes. And, some of the other kind of New York writers that are coming out now. But he said, nevertheless, he loved it. He thought it really worked well on stage. And it was fairly, not unique, really, but kind of that pastiche, which often the best musical theatre is made up of, which I didn't take as an insult. I thought that was something I was aiming for.
I actually don't feel it. They don't feel pastiche to me.
Okay.
They actually feel genuine. Even though, of course,
thank you.
You're young enough not for that to be the case.
Right.
But they didn't feel like. I mean, pastiche is often used as well as send up. Certainly no send up. These are sincerely meant. They can be funny songs, but they are sincere.
And I think that's drawing from a lot of my musical background, because I've spent many years singing classical music, being involved with singing in cathedrals and church choirs, singing a bit of opera as well. And I think I tried to bring all those different disparate elements into my music, as well as the traditional, Richard Rodgers tunes and things like that, which I think absolutely, yeah, I know. If I can be, compared in that light, then I know I've done something well.
Well, I say one or two of them. There was one that really I thought I could have been listening to on the old wireless programs. It's the one where the three women are singing. It's about 2/3 of the way through. And I thought,
foibles.
Absolutely,
exactly. Yes.
I like that one. And I'm going to pay you the compliment. I hope, at least I mean it as a compliment. Of there's only. It has this lovely thing where it does the obvious false rhymes for comic effect. So it's foible, you're in Troible.
Yes, exactly. Good.
And I think that's a lovely conceit. But the two big examples I can think of are from W.S. Gilbert, from The Grand Duke, where he actually rhymes ghost with lowest and then has to put a rhyme in about why he's done that, so in order to make it work. So it's a known failure, shall we say. And then, funny enough, it's Lawrence Hart in Mountain Greenery, and he rhymes... one time it's girl and boy, but the second time it's boy and girl. But he has to make the rhyme Goyle.
Oh, Goyle, yes.
I think it's really knowingly done for the effect. So I thought that song was an absolute comic triumph.
Good, yes, and I think there's a rich tradition of that. I can't think of any offhand, but I think a lot of the musicals we could dredge up that kind of really slightly twisted changing of the words, and I think that song is always... Yes, actually, knowingly,
not
yes.
Bad lyrics.
No, there are enough of the bad lyrics around.
They don't need any
and I think that song always lands so well when we perform it. It's something great.
Well, let's talk about the audience. You're talking about Landing World.
Yes.
The audience seem to be enjoying it today, and it's a very funny piece as well as having some meaning. So
Thank you.
The audience teaches everyone
absolutely
what they have done.
And it's been such a wonderful learning curve for us, because obviously this is the international premiere of this show. We're about halfway through our run now. Audience numbers have been good. Today we had a wonderful mixture of ages from, I think, 5 to about 85, which is superb.
Tiny kids,
yes,
as well as massively old ones.
laughing all the way through, which was awesome. So I think there's something in there, and there was a little bit of ad-libbing today, which ended up with one of the characters jumping around the stage as a kangaroo, which doesn't normally happen.
Oh, does it not?
But no, that was purely. I don't think so. It worked so well. Yes, and so I think that the music, the humour, kind of fits to all ages. But I think it's really interesting to learn about what lands, which songs, which jokes land, and of course it's different with every audience.
Yes.
But it's just extraordinary. I think the actors are learning from that so much as well, and they're kind of expanding. They know which lines to draw out and which to kind of...
Where there's wiggle room for it to increase to enhance the response, absolutely.
But one of the huge constraints we're under being at the Fringe is that we only have a kind of exact amount of time to perform this show in. If we go even a minute over, the stage manager gets quite furious because there's another show ready to rush in.
It's a commando, absolutely. Every show has 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out.
Well, we'd love to kind of do an encore of a particular song or drag out a joke. We just can't. We've got to rush through it. And I think that's really good in a way, because the audience thinks, oh wow, they're not dwelling on that, so there must be much more to come. And luckily, there is.
Can I tell you, there's I don't know if as a director whether they're directorial choices, but I really like the fact that the whole score is played rather splendidly on the grand piano. It's a fairly ropey looking grand piano. It's seen better days. What I love about it is I think that in a sense absolutely sums up the show on level. It's on stage all the time, but it has grandeur and ambition, because grand pianos are they're never knowingly undersold.
Yes.
But it's been knocked around a bit, so it's not in pristine condition, and I think that's what we've got here. You've got a group of people who are making do amend in the outback. There's a drought on, and they're not having an easy time of it, and of course the rest of the world's going to war. But they've got these ambitions to put on, the Olympic Games.
I'm really glad you noticed that, because the venue, when it's not a venue for the Fringe, is in fact a church hall.
It is. It's beneath a fantastic building.
Absolutely, Old St Paul's, and the show is set in a town hall. So we always had in the back of our mind when we chose the venue that this is going to fit in so well. we knew that they had a grand piano. We weren't sure about the quality of it, but as you said, it fits in perfectly. It's battered. It's slightly out of tune, which also fits in perfectly.
But not to a point where it destroys it.
No. And the action's very good, so the MD was happy to play. It's actually a very old Steinway. Yeah, which is good, and it's a beautiful tone.
Yes, absolutely. But it does.
Yeah,
it looks like it's been driven around the building on a crate mover.
So often you see other shows which are set in a similar period, but you look up there and the pianist is playing like an electronic piano, and you think, it slightly doesn't work. But with us, I think we wanted to have everything kind of fitting in well, and it's right. It's that kind of faded glory. They're kind of trying really hard, and I think even the kind of the faded, tattered bunting kind of fits.
Made out of net curtains, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
As everyone was doing in 1940, of course.
Yeah. And we have no helicopters flying in. We don't have green lighting. No, none of that.
But that's just gimmickry. I actually think all that. It's lovely effects, but lovely effects do not a musical make.
That's at the heart of what we want to do. We want to do really good theatre, really effectively, and I think hopefully we've landed.
I think your actors are rather splendid as well. I must say, I like what they're doing with the characters. I'm sure it's written in, but it's the sweet crush that one of the male characters has got on the slightly butcher Dave character. It's so sweet because, and the play is not about that, and that's not resolved in any way. It's just, it feels like a lovely little crush, and it's just. What it does, it gives that character sweetness. And let's be honest, you mentioned Whoop Whoop, and those of us who have seen the film and understand what that represents, there can be a sense when we hear the word outback in Britain, we think that kind of character going through. So it's lovely there's just a little bit of amelioration of stereotypes.
Good, yes. So it's not quite Brokeback Games, it still remains firmly an Outback game, but there is that little hint, and it's partly a bromance, but it never completely develops, but it's absolutely genuine.
And friendship first.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
And Dave must be aware that there's some kind of crush going on, but he refuses to acknowledge it. But he wants the friendship. So
there's a very kind of key line about when Bob says, when Dave's talking about that the show he feels is a little bit girly, and Bob tells him to embrace his inner girl, but Dave immediately reacts saying, "There's no girl in me," and that's kind of very knowing that they are, very, very close characters. Yeah, and I think those two characters will maybe be one of the big spin-offs.
Yeah. Well, I think there's character. I mean, the fact that you've drawn up, as you said, really good characters, partly from life. I'm interested to hear, but I really like those characters. All those characters could go further. So if there is a further iteration.
Yes, and of course, because we're again constrained by time here, I think ideally the show would be a bit longer, so we'd be able to kind of develop the characters a bit more. Yeah, but I'm very much indebted to our director, Paul Ryan Carberry, for helping me to really draw out some of the ideas I had early on, and to kind of really make the show land.
A little bit of dramaturgy.
Absolutely, yes, which is always needed.
It's such a useful extra thing to be able to have. Yeah, because it just gives you that second pair of eyes.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, do you have a website?
We do. It's theoutbackgames.co.uk.
And people can go there?
Absolutely, they can go get more information, see a short video about the making and the meaning of the show, read the biogs of the actors, who are all kind of very, really good people and great talents.
And where would you look? Is it going anywhere after?
Yeah, good question. Well, we didn't know. We wanted to see how it was going to go and what our reviews were going to be like, and so far they've been fantastic. So we're hoping to do a decent run in London sometime in the future, maybe tour it, possibly bring it back next year to the Edinburgh Fringe, and maybe, who knows, and this is going to be the real test to see if we can put it on in Australia.
Well, it does feel like it might at least should be shown.
Absolutely, at least once.
Yeah.
And maybe, because of its the International Games theme, maybe Rio 2016, who knows?
Well, as we say, if you're looking for a sporting tournament, there'll be one along anyway.
Sure, at least one.
Well, thank you so much for talking
my
to
pleasure.
me. It was a lovely show, and I really hope it goes further, and, all power to your elbow.
Thank you. Marvellous talking to you. Thanks very much.
Well, that was Nicholas Edwards, and it was lovely to speak to him about the Outback Games. I truly enjoyed that show. I described it as an engaging musical piece of fun with a lot of heart and playfulness. Well, the next show we're going to be talking about today also is full of playfulness, although you might not realise it from the title if you take it at face value. It's called Riptide, the Slasher Musical. I think you could probably work out that it is slightly tongue-in-cheek. It's a musical based around all those 1950s B-movie horror films, a mixture of surfing and murder. So I spoke to one of the writers and one of the actors about this fantastic show.
I'm Simon Nathan. I wrote Riptide, the slasher musical. I wrote the music for it, and it's fantastic.
And I am David Markin, and I play the role of Brad in Riptide, the slasher musical.
Now, with a title like Riptide, and possibly even more so the subtitle, the slasher musical, I suppose there's a danger that we do know what we're going to get, or that we don't know what we're going to get. It could fall in either direction. So what are we going to get?
Oh, how to describe it? You're going to get a bonanza of entertainment, first of all. So yes, saying the slasher musical does indicate what's going to come in it. But there are a couple of twists and turns that you won't expect, as with any good story. So it takes on a classical approach, but towards the end things do change up quite a lot.
By classical approach, you mean the narrative first?
The classical approach meaning the classical whodunit approach.
Oh, I see.
The classical, keeping the mystique the whole way through the show.
The plot itself, or while not necessarily the most complicated thing in the entire world, is absolutely hilarious, and there are a couple of twists and turns that you just really wouldn't expect. The entire thing is kind of
a heightened sense, by the way, a heightened sense.
Yeah, wait. So you should. Hopefully, we're going to heighten the sense even further during the course of this conversation. But if you've seen those kinds of really so bad they're good 80s B movies in the sort of horror genre,
I was there at the time.
Absolutely.
I can see a few.
The kind of things you really love to hate and hate to love,
but wouldn't do without.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that kind of thing. It's that kind of homage, as it were, to this slasher genre. And while it happens, it's all done with an incredibly hilarious script, which keeps the audience laughing every 30 seconds, every minute or so.
Yeah, exactly.
It's absolutely brilliant.
And there's someone presumably there with a cattle prod and a timer just to make sure that is the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Don't worry, we have
standing
at least
at the back,
5 or 6
doors barricaded.
Yeah, we have 5 or 6 plants every night to make sure they start the laughter off. Because standard.
So, forgive me, how did you come up with it?
So we decided. Sorry, I was about to say. I'm half of a music lyrics writing team. I write the music. My brother Mark writes the lyrics, and we've done a lot of songs together, and decided actually what we really wanted to do was a full-scale musical. And it was at this point.
It's a well-trodden path, if I may say that one.
A well-trodden for a very good reason. I regret it not a single bit. But we neither of us really had a very good eye for writing script or for writing story, anything like that. So we found one of Mark's friends, this absolutely incredible book writer called Chaz Redhead, who is one of the funniest people I know and is an award-winning comedian. And he came up with, he's so intimate with the slasher genre, he jumped at the chance to write a slasher musical, and Riptide was born at that point.
So you could say already the script is a cut above the others.
And
you will have used that already, I'm sure.
Easily.
Yeah, it's cut above the others, / It's absolutely brilliant.
It'll have you in stitches.
It's bloody brilliant.
Yes, that's very good. So when did you have the idea? How long has this taken to come to fruition?
So the first idea we had with it was, we wanted to write a musical 2 years ago, pretty much. A year and a half ago was when we actually started seriously thinking about this, and that was when we contacted Chaz. Pretty much exactly a year after that, we opened in the Rosemary Branch Theatre in Islington for a four-night run, 5 performances over 4 nights. And which
Edinburgh feeder, I would think.
Absolutely, we ended up with lots and lots of 4 and 5 star reviews, which we could put on our flyers, which was absolutely perfect for that. Yes. And we then jumped onto the Edinburgh bandwagon and haven't looked back since.
And how did you join the cast?
Well, I was on tour with an educational show, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was already in Riptide, saying that there was an emergency recast going on, and would I come in and audition for it? And so I went in on my one day off in the week, and sang a little bit of theatre. Such as theatre. Sang a little bit of a medley, had a read through some of the script with some of the existing cast members, and Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. I am officially in the show, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Dave was an absolutely incredible auditionee that he came and sang 2 songs, one of which is Giants in the Sky, which is a nice high tenor song, and the other one was Old Man River, one of the lowest bass songs. And both of them entirely brilliantly competently. This man has a 2.5 octave usable range. It is outstanding.
You are Emar Sumac. Do you know Emar Sumac? Yeah. There aren't many who can do that.
Oh man, I have a very interesting voice.
Yeah, clearly. And an accent to boot.
Yeah, I'm from Belfast, and then I've been an actor
You
for
didn't sound
about...
like Kent, I must say.
No, not quite like Kent. But strangely, I do live there at the minute.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, down in Sidcup. That bustling hub. But I've been an actor for about 8 years, and I trained at the Guildford School of Acting in the middle of that. Graduated from there 2 years ago, and I've been kind of progressively working since.
Well, that's good. Not everyone can say that.
Yeah, it's quite nice. But it's always a struggle, but at the same time, everything works quite nicely. This is the first show I've done which has been a Fringe production.
Oh, is it really?
But yeah, the first time I've had, not had to do that, the first time I've had the chance to do that. But when you find something that just works and flows very nicely.
And tickles your own funny bone as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I went into the audition and did the songs, that was standard audition. And then when I got the script to read and I heard some of the actual music, I thought, oh wait, hang on, this is pretty damn good. I would quite like to be involved in this.
I always get amazed at how trusting actors are
Yes.
for coming into an audition for something, for a new writing.
Yeah.
So they have no idea how good it's going to be or not.
It's like being born in that sense. You've really got very little say. You know, the answer is yes or I'll be born, and then the rest of it's all down to chance.
But it's quite a nice thing though, because it means that in a way you get to put a little bit of your own spin on something instead of having a rendition that's been done 10 times before. You get a little bit of originality.
Yeah, you'd have a great deal of trouble going into Les Miserables and trying to recreate the character.
Yeah, exactly.
Dave has redefined our complete douchebag jock that we are getting in the actual show. His character is the one you absolutely loathe throughout the entire show, and really not so much the antagonist, because without giving too much away, he doesn't kill everyone, but but he is. He's that kind of character which everyone just wants to punch in the face.
Yeah. But he does it all very innocently.
Yes.
All very innocently.
So he doesn't realise he's a rotter.
No, he's just an absolute idiot.
Yes. And there's a stronger word you couldn't use.
Yes.
So give me, and this might be easy or it might be difficult. In a word, what word describes the tone of the piece as overall? And in a word, what word describes the tone of the music? How would you describe the music? I will ask you then to elaborate, so don't worry. You will be allowed to put more than one word in a minute.
In one word, it sounds like a cop-out, but variety.
Yeah.
The songs...
By the way, it is, yes.
I apologise for that, but I do want to elaborate on
yes.
that. Okay, if the main style, which probably covers about 30% of the songs, is rock.
As you'd sort of expect, actually.
As you sort of expect.
I mean, if we're talking sort of surfing and bald shorts and that kind of thing, you know, you think 50s, you think bad Elvis Presley films. That's
Precisely.
what I think of,
This isn't because I particularly like writing rock music, but it's because what really, really suited it.
Yeah.
But then you have the song, the classic song of the old man warning everyone not to go down to the beach because there's bad things in those parts, which is done to a very sort of like upbeat swing number, kind of sort of Alan Menken kind of Disney kind of thing.
Although it sounds with a Scooby-Doo plot, possibly.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But we also cover styles. We've got tango, we've got klezmer, we've got synth pop, we've got hip hop, we've got slow 80s pop ballads and hot jazz. Yeah, lots and lots of things going on. The style of the lyrics and the style of what's going on stage really influences what's going on in the music.
But that shows a surprising versatility, if I may say, because that is a lot of ranges, and not everyone would say I can do all those things.
Well, it's pastiching is easier than lots of people give it credit for, so here for that.
Actually, a good pastiche is still a skill.
Yeah.
It's not just chords and rhythm, is it?
Absolutely. So I've got, I'm also the MD of the show.
Yeah.
I've got together this absolutely incredible band. We've got a reed player who plays 4 or 5 instruments during the course of the show.
At the same time?
Not yet, but we're
Working on it, yeah.
We're training her. We've got a trumpet player who also doubles on what's a slightly larger trumpet called a flugelhorn, which sounds like it almost sounds like a French horn. It's an absolutely beautiful sound. We've got a keyboard with all its range of sounds, bass guitar, and drums with a range of percussion around it. So the amount of different kind of sounds you can get out of this is actually quite surprising. Oh, reggae, that's another one which we managed to fit in. But it's but the actual writing process of getting these kind of things, I sort of sit down and if I wanted to write, say, I don't know, hard rock, for example, I'd type into YouTube I'd start with Google. I'd top 10 hard rock songs ever, and just work through that list and see what makes them tick, what absolutely goes.
So
for
you
it.
do a bit of analysis, actually.
Totally.
You take to bits and see how they work. Really.
I mean, I've been listening to Sweet Hot Chili Peppers. What am I talking? I'm thinking of dinner tonight. Yeah, no, right. Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then the Power Rangers theme. To get the same kind of style out of them and see what links them actually.
I'm waiting for that double. I'm waiting for them actually to do Wembley. Those two groups.
We'll get there. And it's. There is actually some things which you can sort of like pick out of it, which actually just makes it sound like really rocky and really really awesome, which you can get from that kind of thing. And
Simon's very modest as well. He has this incredible ability to just hear things that haven't been played yet. So,
really?
as in, he has this fantastic ability to just pick apart a song and understand it perfectly without thinking at all. It's just second nature to you.
A forensic intellectual one, is that fair?
I suppose so.
It sounded like a compliment to me.
Yeah. I think so. It's quite hard to tell with these people from Belfast.
I would say that from working with you, that music is just like second nature to you. It just clicks.
Without I don't know what to say to that, but like I guess what Dave's referring to is like I'm quite good at looking at a score and hearing it without actually having to play it. Which
so you have
is
a felicity for music.
I suppose so, yeah.
As well as a facility for music, yes.
Yeah, indeed, and hoping to continue doing that for my life,
yes.
Which would be really, really fantastic.
You're looking for a long life, obviously. Yes.
I'm
doing it for my life, but I do expect to be killed for my art in a year's time.
Well, yeah, that's the problem, is that every time we don't sell out one of these shows, one of the cast members has to be brutally murdered. And,
well, I believe that's the tradition.
Yeah, in a slasher musical, it's what has to happen. And so we're hoping to have a full house every time. Otherwise, the rest of my life will be quite short.
And the tone of the book?
The tone of the book? Ooh, how to describe that? Intelligent hilarity, I would say. So it's written with perfect timing, and it has very specific delivery to it. And as with all great comedy, if you get the timing even a millisecond wrong, the whole thing falls flat.
Yeah. It's like a souffle.
Exactly.
A comedy souffle.
A comedy souffle.
Chaz has, sorry to interrupt, but Chaz has this absolutely amazing, I guess, idea of what's going to work on stage. He really, really envisions it, and there have been a lot of jokes which have taken 5 or 6 nights to play, but Chaz has refused to cut from the script because he knows they can. Yeah. And then suddenly someone does something at a millisecond different timing, and suddenly it's the best,
when
funniest
they land,
thing you've seen.
So he's still got confidence. Well, that's good. I mean, in a way, he sounds like a director-writer almost.
Oh, he is
indeed. He directed the show as well.
Oh, he did? Oh, well, there you are.
But because of his background in stand-up comedy, first of all, he understands exactly what works with an audience and how to play it, but he's also a fantastic writer. So it's a very nice double team in himself.
A double threat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, you must be taken out and ritually slaughtered. And do you have social media connections? Can people see you on the Facebook and on the Twitter? And do you have a webpage? And tell me more. I'm going to carry on talking till you interrupt me.
Absolutely.
Very good.
You can visit us at www.riptidemusical.com or follow us on Twitter at riptidemusical. And we've even got a Facebook group, which is, as you probably guessed by now, facebook.com/riptidemusical.
I see what you've done there.
Yeah. There's a common theme, isn't there?
What is it? I can't put my finger on it though. Splendid. Well, I wish you great success.
Thank you very much.
Is it likely to go anywhere else, or are you likely to go on to write further things? You've said you had the rest of your life to fill.
We are definitely looking at writing further things. Riptide itself would make an absolutely excellent... at the moment, it's currently an hour long, but there's a lot more that we want to do, and it could absolutely be extended to a really good London small theatre slot, we feel.
We're talking arts theatre or something like that?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
And are you talking as in 2 acts? Expanded to a proper...
possibly 2 acts, possibly just 1 long act. I can see it being 2 acts, certainly, but it's probably not going to tour all the West End theatres without a substantial amount of new story in it. But certainly we've learnt such a huge amount from writing this, and we're definitely going to be looking to collaborate and write more things in the future, which will hopefully take us to the next level.
Fantastic. I really hope they do, and I hope you're staying in contact.
Thank you very much.
If I can get to Riptide, I certainly shall. If I can't, then at least I've had this conversation. But thank you very much indeed. I wish you great success, and good luck on not being murdered, either on stage or professionally.
Thank you very much. Lovely talking to you.
There we are. My thanks to Simon and David there for talking about Riptide, the slasher musical. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to see it, but somebody else has reviewed it in this way. A real 50s B-movie affair, complete with low-budget effects, wobbly staging, and copious amounts of spurting blood. What's not to like? It sounds a hoot. Well, just one more show to talk about to wrap up the 20th century, or at least the first 50 or so years of it. And so, it's almost perfect that the show in itself is a tribute show to one of the great musical writing personalities of the first half of the 20th century. I've mentioned his name already once in today's episode, and it is Ivor Novello, because the show that I'm talking about next with Daisy Henderson, who's the director and one of the singers in the piece, is called The Ivor Novello Story by John Kearney. Ivor Novello lived from 1893 to 1951. For some, his name only lives on as the title of a music award, although that in itself shows you the standing that the man has in the music industry. But also, he was one of the great writers of musical theatre. And this year, above almost any other year, is so important for anyone who remembers Ivor Novello, because on the 8th of October, 1914, 100 years ago, the world heard for the very first time Keep the Home Fires Burning by Ivor Novello. One of the songs which has been handed down from generation to generation. One of those rare anthems which is unconnected with nationality, and yet somehow retains a sentimental hold on most people's hearts. Let's hear about the Ivor Novello story as I spoke to Daisy Henderson in the excitingly busy Royal Terrace, one of Edinburgh's most attractive, and as you can hear, busy streets. Musical talk.
My name is Daisy Henderson. I'm the Director of Classical Musicians Scotland, and we have just put on a show called The Ivor Novello Story, which was written by John Kearney by arrangement with Samuel French Limited. As well as directing it, I also appear in it as a soprano.
It's a professional show with a professional cast, and it's beautifully, beautifully done.
Thank you.
It is. It's a truly glittering show, I think. It's sort of, and I described before we started recording it. In my view, it was immaculately done. But let's talk. Why? I know this is a show that you did last year, in fact, because I wanted to see it last year and I couldn't due to a clash. So I was so delighted you decided to put it on again this year. But forgive me, why have you and your organisation chosen to showcase Ivor Novello in this piece?
About 3 years ago, I met John Kearney at a social gathering, and for some reason or other, we started talking about Ivor Novello, at which point he said he'd written this stage show in the early 70s. He'd actually been in hospital at the time, and this was something to keep himself busy. And he performed it for a couple of productions in Glasgow before he moved to New Zealand, where he put it on again. And he had always wanted to see it.
That's a big tour.
A big tour, a very wide tour, yes. And he'd always wanted to do it again. And I said, well, if he didn't mind if I took it and had a look at it and saw what we could do with it, at which point he was very delighted about that.
And it's a good piece.
John Kearney gave me 2 very large, very messy folders full of script and music, which took me well over a week to go through. And I think he had used more than one accompanist in the past, and they had put their own markings all over the music. And it meant that some of the things we didn't want to use musically because it would have made the show too long. So we actually had to cut quite a bit of the music out.
Which is an Edinburgh constraint, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, no one ever sees a complete show here at this time of year because everything is out in the venue, of course.
Yes, 3-hour show would have been too long.
And would it have run to a 3-hour show, do you think, in its original form, or thereabouts?
I think possibly it would have run to almost 3 hours in its original form.
Well, this is 1 hour and 40, 1 hour 30, something like that.
1 hour 50.
Yes, and it feels very comfortable. It's very tight. It certainly doesn't outstay its welcome, if I may say.
No, good.
And I like the mix of the song with the narrative. It's not bogged down with too much narrative. It's Ivor Novello telling his life, and accompanied by 2 singers, of whom you're one excellent example, and a pianist. and it sketches out the highlights of his life and illustrates them with appropriate songs. So it's not it's a chronological life story, but it's not a chronological listing of his songs.
Yes, I mean, if you knew a lot about Ivor Novello, it's not exactly accurate. Well, it is accurate, but it does miss out quite a bit of his life.
It can't be the complete story.
You can't do everything.
But it's a point-to-point on the headlines, if you like,
yes.
isn't it? Thank you. So you were attracted to the piece having seen it. So you were given this bundle of paper with all these markings on it.
Yes.
And you did the filtering.
I did the filtering initially, and then I was thinking, well, we really needed a very good Ivor, a very strong Ivor. And a friend of mine, Taylor Wilson, who was our original mezzo but couldn't unfortunately manage these Fringe performances, had suggested James Dinsmore, who I'd known in the past through working at Scottish Opera. And James was perfect. And James used to be a lawyer.
Oh, really?
So he's very good with the spoken word. And the pair of us sat down and went through the script, and we changed the order of certain things and moved things into different positions.
Which you have to do when you're condensing
I
as well,
think,
don't you?
I think you have to.
When you write something, it has its natural rhythms.
Yes.
If you're condensing it, then it will have different rhythms, and you want to make sure they are the maximum,
Yes.
you're getting the best out of the piece.
Yes,
So.
and also what we found was that John Kearney had written an awful lot of the narration for the character of Ivor, and we thought that was a huge amount for one person to learn. So
particularly when they're singing as well, because he does sing in this, doesn't he? In a way that Ivor didn't, of course.
Yes. And so we thought, well, we'll give the soprano and the mezzo a little bit of narration to do as well. So we felt that worked quite well.
That balance works really well, because it also allows you, not that there's comment and editorial, but it does give you that second set of eyes, doesn't it, on the character of Ivor.
Yes.
Can I ask you your own... Before you pick this up, you say you met him at a party and you were talking about Ivor Novello. Have you been a fan? Or is it... I mean, we all know Ivor Novello, but does everyone know... Everyone knows of Ivor Novello, but not everyone knows Ivor Novello's work these days.
Yes, I had always known of Ivor Novello, and once we looked at the music, I was amazed at how much of his music I actually had known. And having been a singer for many years, I probably had sung a lot of the music in various places and different concerts. So I was familiar with quite a lot of it.
The funny thing is, it has, although Ivor Novello he's still a household name, but most people would be pressed, I think, to identify things he'd done. But as you say, if you then said, well, here's this song, do you know it? They do. They know We'll Gather Lilacs.
Yes.
They'll know Waltz of My Heart, probably. Funny enough, things like Vitality, which is I think of as a Cicely Courtnidge number.
Well, that was one I didn't know originally. Oh, right. That was new to me. But a lot of people know And Her Mother Came Too.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
And of course, Keep the Home Fires Burning.
Yes,
which we'll hear a lot of in this 100th anniversary of the First World War.
Exactly. And we're amazed at the number of people when we are singing who are mouthing the words back at us from the audience.
I noticed that absolutely when I was sitting in the audience. People were quietly singing them to themselves, and in one occasion, and there was a kind of almost an open invitation to join in. So but that's lovely, because the audience on the whole was an older audience.
Yes.
But there's a real sense of warmth and ownership of those numbers.
And that's true. And we actually had a lady who was in on Wednesday who had announced at the door as she was coming in that she had been to see Ivor Novello in 1943.
In 1943?
In 1943. She was now 85. She certainly did not look it. Mrs. Cram, her name was. So we took a photograph with herself and myself on the set. And she said she can remember it vividly. She was a young girl at the time, and she saw him singing, but as you had said earlier, he wasn't a great singer, so he sang rather.
Yes, a bit of Rex Harrison, as we think.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Also he introduced a lot of the numbers, didn't he?
Yes.
So quite often on the records, such records as there are, you'll find he's talking to somebody, and then she quite often will go into the song.
Yes, and she said he was incredibly charismatic. Incredibly charismatic.
He did have that reputation, didn't he? I mean, the greatest profile in show business, apparently. Well, as you say in the show, two profiles
stuck together.
Which is a lovely description. And then, of course, you've got the... we'd use a heartthrob or sex symbol even these days, whereas matinee idol, I think, is the more appropriate term.
Yes.
But, he was a man who
the
turned
Valentino
heads.
type character, really. I think some of his publicity photographs show him very much in that light.
He trades on that. Well, of course, he had the silent film career, as you point out in the piece, with Hitchcock, The Lodger
and Downhill.
And I actually went to see not only the film version of The Rat, which was the play he performed, which is a silent film, but the two sequels that they made. Okay. I went through an Ivor Novello triple bill at the National Film Theatre some years ago.
You can see The Lodger on YouTube in its entirety, yes. Which is quite, I mean, it's very dated.
It is, yeah.
Now, but you can get an idea why he was such a popular character.
And although it is dated, it's still a good example of a silent Hitchcock. You know,
Yes.
it's still worth watching because it's still got something.
That's
and
true.
he's as much part of that. You know, Hitchcock is the director, but Ivor was the star for a reason.
Yes.
Do you think it's interesting? Well, let me ask you a question. I love the work of Ivor Novello. I've always worked on the basis, I've got a kind of flip statement where there are three great British composers of the pre-war period in particular, Ivor Novello, Noel Coward and Vivian Ellis.
Yes.
And I always argue that Ivor Novello is the romantic one, Noel Coward is the comic one, and Vivian Ellis manages to straddle both. Now, that's a huge oversimplification because they could all do it all. But that's almost how they've been remembered. But Noel Coward is regularly revived, his shows particularly, but his songs too.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask, why is Ivor Novello not?
I actually once asked somebody that because I also worked at Scottish Opera, and I thought that would be quite a good thing to put on one of his big
Glamorous
musical
Nights,
plays.
or
Yes,
Dancing Years, yes, absolutely.
and they said apparently it has a cast of hundreds,
yes.
And very lavish sets, very glamorous costumes, and it would be very expensive to put on. And that's the only reason I know. It seems a shame that nobody has actually put on a full production of it. But whether the full production, taking it away from just the songs and adding in all the dialogue, would then be a little too dated now, I don't know. I would love to be able to see one.
So would I genuinely would. I mean, there is, over the last few years, there's been sort of pub versions of one or two. And the Dancing Years, I think, was done in a pub in London a couple of years ago, which presumably didn't have a cast of 50 or 100.
No.
And you do wonder, actually, whether that's a glib statement, where actually, you know, all modern shows would be boiled down a bit. You wouldn't expect it to have 100.
No.
And does it actually need 100 characters?
Yeah.
But the thing I always wonder about is it partly because, I mean, today was a very good example. It was beautiful. The performances were beautiful. The selection was beautiful. The accompanying music was just, you know, it's flawless. A flawless gem today. But there is an element that the selection that one gets sometimes, and the way it's portrayed occasionally, is that it's like listening to a crystal chandelier. It's beautiful, but they're all played in that, because they're quite often played in a recital, in a concert environment.
Yes.
And you wonder what it would be like listening to it with an orchestra, a pit
Playing
orchestra.
it.
Yes,
It would be
absolutely.
lovely with an orchestra.
Wouldn't
I mean,
it?
it would be
But it would sound
just
very different, don't you
tremendous.
think?
I think it would be very different. And I think you'd have to be careful with the kind of voices you used as well. I don't know whether the classically trained voices suit that stuff, because it is a very wide range that you have to sing.
You do,
it's a good
yes.
full 2 octaves, quite a lot in the lower register and quite a lot in the top register
You are
as well.
Emma Sumac, if I may say.
Thank you.
That was meant as a compliment. She
Good.
had an enormous range, 8 octaves or something ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, something stupid.
No, I don't know if that's a possibility or not.
Well, I think it probably wasn't 8, but it was,
No.
it was such a large number that she
Yes.
was considered sort of that kind of thing.
Wow.
Really. But there's also the other thing, which is in the selections we get all the romantic ones, and indeed, a lady as she left was telling your accompanist who was standing at the door, Bill, you know, how romantic the whole thing was, and of course it is. But Ivor Novello did write lots of comic numbers.
Yes.
And Her Mother Came Too.
Yes.
Is a fine example. Vitality is actually a very upbeat number.
That's right.
It's not slow. It's not sentimental. Although there's nothing wrong with slow and sentimental. But there's so much more to Ivor Novello, and I'm always wondering, is there any scope, do you think, for a concert of Ivor Novello's up numbers, his funnier numbers, or at least concentrating more on that?
I'm sure there must be.
Did you ever see the film Gosford Park?
Yes,
Where
because
they-
it was the chap that played him, the actor, I can't remember his
Jeremy
name. Jeremy Northam. Yes. He was. He did that very well, and that's quite often remarked upon, that he was playing the part of Ivor Novello.
Well, I think it's just put a little bit of energy into the Ivor Novello
Yes.
legacy, as it were. But the thing I liked about one of the many things I liked about Gosford Park was they had him as Ivor Novello entertaining this country house dinner party.
Yes.
With some of his own songs, and they picked not only the famous songs, but they did pick a few of the upbeat numbers, one or
Yes.
two of which are excellent.
Yes.
And you don't hear very often.
It's bound
so-
to be right on the night,
Well, that's a good one
which
as
is really
well.
tongue in cheek.
It is, isn't it?
Do you know,
Yes, it's
everything
about-
goes wrong.
Yeah, yes, it's a show business song.
Yes.
It's an anthem in its own way, in a strange way, isn't it? It's about it's well, it's actually a little bit like There's No Business Like Show Business by
Yes.
Irving Berlin.
Same sort of style,
yes,
isn't
is,
it?
You're hoping for the best, and then you're drummed out of town because it's a flop, unfortunately.
Yes.
So your own history of Ivor Novello, such as it is, then, which you were saying that you did have this interest, but has it developed? Has the show?
Oh, I
because
think
you've been
so.
with the show for a while, haven't you?
Yes. Well, we started working on it in 2011, and our first performance of it was in January 2012. And we've performed it all over Scotland.
Yes.
We've taken it up to Skye, and we've performed it on Mull, so we've
really?
taken
So you
it to
really
the
have
islands as well.
Once again, another tour. Very
Yes,
good.
and after this week of 5 performances at the Fringe, we have one at Curas Festival on Sunday, and then we have another 6 throughout Scotland in September and October.
So there's a chance to see it beyond Edinburgh?
Yes,
Very
definitely.
good. So do you have a website, by the way, where people can look? Because people will be
Certainly.
interested.
Yes, the website is www.classicalmusiciansscotland.com, which is a huge mouthful. I apologise for that. And if you click on the Ivor Novello story, go to the artist list and click on the Ivor Novello story. That will give all the dates of where we're performing it.
Wonderful. And how's it been going down in Scotland?
Surprisingly well. We always have a bit of a laugh that it's 4 Scots performing a piece about a Welshman who a lot of people thought was upper crust English. A lot of people don't always realise that he was Welsh.
The son of a song?
Yes.
A singing teacher.
The number of people who have said to us they remember their mother or the grandmother singing the songs at the piano to them, and we get a lot of tears as well, hopefully in a good way.
Yes, nostalgic happiness.
Yes.
Yes, melancholy and bittersweet.
Yes, especially at Keep the Home Fires Burning, we get a lot of people who are visibly moved by that. And
what do you put that down to? Because I think that is a powerful number. Forgive me, I'm a young man, you're a young woman. We were not involved in the First or Second World War.
No.
And it's a World War I anthem. It's very nearly 100 years old this year, I think.
Yes.
And yet it still has the power to somehow
move people.
Why is that? I mean, of all his songs, I think it's. I mean, we'll Gather Lilacs is the one everyone sort of thinks of for the romantic stuff, but this has got some kind of real tug on the heart.
I think if many people were asked what they felt was the song that epitomised war, I think that would be probably the one that 80-90% of people would say. It's the one that most people know. And if anybody has sons or nephews or relations who are serving in the armed forces, they will know it as well. It's hard to know. I think it's partly the tune, because it's such a beautiful tune.
It is indeed.
But it's also the sentiment behind it. Stay strong at home while your sons and fathers and are away off fighting the war.
I wonder if it's also something to do with the absolute enormous impact that it had when it started. Very few songs go in, as he says in the show,
exactly.
Are adopted midway through the song, let alone through the evening when it's first premiered. And yet, it absolutely, as you say, symbolised the war. A friend of mine, I may just drop this in, he's an academic at the University of Southampton, Dr. Michael Williams, and amongst other things, he's an expert on Ivor Novello. And he has done a lot of research about Ivor Novello, and he was telling me once that there are reports in the newspapers of veterans from the First World War, during the First World War and afterwards, weeping openly in public, which of course is not a British thing to do.
No, not at all.
And certainly not in the era of the 19-teens, the wartime period. Weeping in public when Home Fires was being sung, and it was inserted into everything. It was put in pantomimes at the time, believe it or not. Keep the morale up, but let's have keep the home fires burning.
Yes.
And people would genuinely and burst into tears on it, and that's. You wonder, is it the song? Is it the context in which it landed that we've drawn with the song? Is it what the song is bundled up in? I'm not putting this very well, but you know what?
I think it's the tune and the sentiment.
But I can think of no other song that has that kind of genuine emotional pull.
I think being Scottish, there are 1 or 2 Scottish songs that may have that sort of emotional. Caledonia is one. Flower of Scotland sometimes, although I shouldn't say this, but it can be done to death sometimes. But there are some emotive songs. I like Jerusalem as well. That is such an emotive song as well.
But it's interesting, those songs, in a way, have become national emblems, haven't they?
Yes.
I mean, Flower of Scotland is a Scottish anthem, if not the Scottish anthem.
Yes.
Jerusalem is sometimes identified as the English anthem for when you look at the title of it, you think, that's a
That's
slightly
strange,
it's a
yes.
sidestep, but, yeah, but you get the
Strange,
idea.
yes.
Yes, but this isn't, is it? It is, although is it? Dangerous to talk politics in Scotland at the moment,
No.
but is it representative of Britishness at that time, which, of course, there was a very strong sense of Britishness?
I think it's any kind of national feeling that is strong about wartime.
It's, yes.
And it's injustice, and that everybody at home has to be there and keeping strong while their relations are away fighting for them.
And yet the song of the Second World War, which is sometimes identified as Noel Coward's London Pride, for example, has a very different feel. It's a lovely song. You can see why it sort of kept ironically, it was all about the home fires, that one. It's very much a song about the home and not about the foreign fields of war,
Right.
theatres of war. But it doesn't have the same pull, I don't think.
I don't know that one.
But no. Oh, really?
No, I don't think so.
But Ivor Novello, I always think it's such a shame that he's not remembered. He's sort of remembered in Aspic, and I wish that weren't the case.
I was handing out a flyer once in Glasgow last year before last year's Edinburgh Fringe, and a young girl took the leaflet from me. She said, "Oh, Ivor Novello, oh, that sounds great," she said. And I said, "Oh, have you heard of Ivor Novello?" "Oh, yes, I listen to the awards every year."
Ah.
And she was expecting to come along to some musical
review of
award
Pops,
ceremony. And she said, "Well, who is Ivor Novello?" She hadn't heard of him at all, apart from the awards
It's
ceremony.
funny you should say that. I've had exactly the self-same conversation with generally younger people.
Yes.
The name now lives on through the awards,
Yes.
but sadly not through the original work.
I think sometimes it might be the language as well that is a little bit dated. The words are not easy to learn. They
Is
don't.
that true? Tell me.
Well, some of the words
Yes, as a professional.
don't make. They're quite. I'm trying to think of some example to give you. I should know, having just sung about 14 songs from it. Yes, it does sort of have a Victorian ethos
Parlour
about
ballad.
it.
Yes, it
yes.
does. Yes, I know what you mean by that. I mean, he was already. I suppose the problem is he was already trading on nostalgia.
Yes, there's
At
a lot
the time
of.
he was writing contemporary.
That's it.
Yes.
There's a lot of moonlight, starlights,
Yes.
and sunshine, and deep emotion and love in it. And a lot of the words are actually repeated quite often.
Dream. If you
Dream.
you can play Dream Bingo with Ivor Novello every time he says it.
Says dream.
Yes, yeah, on the tick list. Absolutely.
Yes.
Do you have a favourite? I know it's a trite question, but it's sometimes illuminating.
I love We'll Gather Lilacs done in the duet style. I think that's just wonderful.
And you can't miss it, can you? It's got
No.
to be there.
And I like My Homeland Was Calling, when a violin and then a violin began to play. I like that one as well, because it always gets a nice reaction from the
It has
audience.
such an interesting ending as well, isn't it? It goes a cappella, as it were.
Well,
Or
that was us.
Oh, well,
That
your arrangement
was us.
is
yes.
stunning then, in which case.
Thank you. Yes.
And it affects, because obviously it represents in a way his passing in the piece.
Yes.
But it's beautiful, yes, and beautifully done.
Thank you.
Funnily enough, I love Vitality, because I know the original, sung by Cicely Courtnidge, which I say, so it's for me it's a lovely up comedy number.
Yes.
Which I subscribe to, incidentally. If you translate the word vitality for enthusiasm, I think absolutely
Yes.
it is the...
We cut that quite considerably. Sorry, it's awful. But there was a huge bit at the beginning of it, which was like the introduction to Vitality, and we cut it because we felt it had more impetus when you just started with Vitality, instead of doing this spiel before you went into the song.
And of course, what we have to remember is so many of these songs are written for theatre and
Yes.
shows, and so actually we're plucking them out. They feel like standalone songs, but of course they're not. So sometimes the verse will reflect what's happening in the plot, or be a transition from plot to song, in a slightly old-fashioned way, perhaps. They're not Stephen Sondheim carrying the plot forward, but they do have that connection. So you're right, you do have to trim and prune, and sometimes remove a verse before you get to the chorus. And for me, I have to say I have one other favourite, and I'm so glad you included it. It was Highwayman Love, which you used as your Act 2 opener.
That's a super song. That is. I don't sing that one, unfortunately. Elizabeth McCormack was singing that today, but that's a fabulous song, and that it is, and again, it's a very dramatic song.
Well, funny enough, I think it's it is. It's very evocative too. You can sort of it's a woman singing of her love, and which highwayman, which of us two is riding the faster? I haven't got the lyric correct, but you get the idea.
Yes.
But the point was, there's a sense of actually travel in it as well. I think.
Yes.
I think you do feel that this is someone singing on a horseback almost. Yes. I think that's. the fact that I'm still, I've never ridden on a horse, so I have no idea what that is. It's not anything any of us regularly do anyway, even except perhaps policemen. And I don't see them singing so often. Yeah. So it's interesting that evocativeness and imagination is still carried through in the lyrics.
Yes.
I must say, by the way, that my way into Ivor Novello was through Hinge and Bracket.
Was it?
Yes.
Is that the first time you can remember?
I loved Hinge and Bracket when I was a younger
Yes.
man, and indeed as a child I used to watch it with my mother when they were on television, and they periodically sang lots and lots of songs from what I would call the wider British canon. Scots, Irish, Welsh, English, you name it, but and quite often with a comic twist. But I remember Highwoman Love being sung by Dame Hilda Brackett, which you might not say is the best place to come in. But I tell you what, it's a launching point.
Yes.
And at least they were singing them.
And it was obviously memorable.
Oh, for me, absolutely.
Yes. And it started a love affair with Ivor Novello from that time then. You've obviously wanted to know more about him ever since.
I have indeed. Can you remember your first Ivor Novello song? As a professional, might it have been something that you learned to sing? You said earlier,
I think
but
it's
you knew them beforehand,
probably We'll Gather Lilacs.
Oh,
I think may have been done at a concert somewhere. I think that's probably the first one that I was aware of knowing, and knowing or hearing the name Ivor Novello, which would have been many years ago.
Oh, I don't believe that for a second. Well, thank you so much for talking about
very
your
welcome.
show.
Thank you.
I can only tell you that it was absolutely flawless. As I said, a flawless
Thank
gem.
you.
And immaculate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was very kind, and it's lovely to have positive feedback like that. It's very nice.
Musical talk. Well, my thanks to Daisy Henderson there. And I really liked the Ivor Novello story. I gave it 5 stars. It was as immaculate and glittering as a crystal chandelier. And do you know what? I learnt something very interesting. Because, as much as I like the songs of Ivor Novello, I don't know them all. And one of the songs I really didn't know very well was called Rose of England, written in the 1930s. Which surprised me, because I said I didn't know it. But I sort of did, because as I sat there in the auditorium listening to this song being sung perfectly, I realised that I knew at least the music, the melody line. Unfortunately, I knew it as a different song. I knew it as the Ferret Song, one of the few songs sung publicly by John Cleese in the radio programme I'm Sorry I'll Read That Again, the wonder show of the 1960s, where it's subtitled I've Got a Ferret Sticking Up My Nose. That's Rose of England, ladies and gentlemen, by Ivor Novello. You can't say we don't broaden your horizons here on Musical Talk. Well, that's it for this week. There's plenty more to hear about the Edinburgh Fringe in the next few weeks, so I do hope you'll join us again here, same time, same place, as they say, although as it's a podcast, you can listen to it whenever you want, and who knows, this could be 2135 and you could be listening in a museum or in a sound archive to some bald idiot from the 20th century talking in the early part of the 21st century. However, I'm working on the basis that I'm talking to people living alive and happily in 2014. Well, as you can see, I've reached a stage where I'm just talking bunkum and balderdash, and so it is time to finish. So for me, it's goodbye, but we'll finish today with one more song from Geoffrey Mayhew's fantastic score to The Horror, The Final Curtain, which is a very typical sounding musical number called The Little Button Hook. Speak to you soon. Goodbye.
A lady buys some button boots, but to her they was no good. It took an hour to get them on and put her in a mood. She takes them back and says to Sol, these ain't no use to me. He says, oi vey, there's an easier way, I'll tell you what you need. You take your little button hook and you pop it in the buttonhole. In, out, turn it round about. If you know what you're doing, the button pops out. There's nothing like a button hook for getting the job done right. If it's used with vim and vigor, it's a handy little jigger any time of day or night. The parsons with the newlyweds trying to set them straight, talking about the birds and bees and getting in a state. When up comes Mother Riley, says, leave this one to me. For I've heard say there's an easier way, I'll tell yous what you need. You take your little button hook and you pop it in the buttonhole. In, out, turn it round about. If you know what you're doing, the button pops out. There's nothing like a button hook for getting the job done right. If it's used with vim and vigour, it's a handy little jigger any time of day or night.
This episode of Musical Talk presented and edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2014, except for the songs, where the copyright remains with Geoffrey Mayhew as the creator. And my thanks to him for letting me play these songs in today's episode. Are you happy with that? I'll edit out those little bits and pieces?
Yes.
Fire engine will make it thrilling, won't it?
No. Yes, Edinburgh during the Fringe.